I'm Corbett Wall with DB Auction, here with your feeder flash for Tuesday, June the 16th, brought to you in part by VitaFirm Mineral, made by Biozyme right there in St. Joe Mo. Feeder buyers were not deterred early in the week here, even though we've seen that our artificial fat cattle market is starting to fade. We've got a lot of market-ready cattle coming down the line. We've got a lot of heavy backed up cattle that we've got to get taken care of here over the next several months. We do have our slaughter back up to normal levels, and that's great, but you would have thought when we lost as much ground as we did last week in our fed cattle market that your feeder cattle buyers might be a little apprehensive to give the prices, but your markets were good starting out on Monday and some high volume sales. And if you look, they're hedging those cattle off the December board for the most part there, and it's sitting, it's the first one going out that's over $1, sitting at 102.87 on the close on Monday, but closer than that, it's well under $1. But we're glad that our feeder cattle market is still good. This feeder cattle market has really stayed good throughout the COVID crisis and the upheaval in the fed cattle market and the gouging and everything that took place in your beef, because you know, guys are still buying feeder cattle and they're still filling these empty pens. But let's look at the board on Monday. June live cattle futures were unchanged at 96.07. August up 67 cents at $96 even. Pretty close right in there. And then we keep thinking that, man, don't you guys know that there's a lot of cattle to come in August? But August board continues to stay right up there with our spot cash, our spot board figure there for the closest month on June. But you go on out front on your live cattle futures past the hot summer months, and you see that your contracts are up 40 cents to up 82 cents. August feeder cattle up 7 cents at 131.17. They were down hard early, come back. September was up a dime at 132.57. You go on out from there, and they were up 40 to up 85 cents. So pretty good day to start out on a Monday, especially as many feeder cattle as we moved. And we did have fed cattle trade on Monday, and I always ask you guys, why do packers come out wanting to buy cattle on a Monday? Because they need them. So the weighted average on last week's fed cattle trade in your 5-area feeding region, negotiated cash 82,400 head. You compare that to the previous week of 123,600 head. But compared to the same week a year ago, there was only 51,400 head. So a much lighter negotiated cash trade, but still heavier than what we are under normal times when most all the cattle are trading formula. But you look at your prices for last week's negotiated cash trade in your 5-area feeding region as a whole. Your live sales of steers and heifers range from 98 to 108. That was $7 to $10 lower, guys, than the previous week. Your weighted average was 104.47 for steers live basis. That was down $7.92. So name another time whenever your fat cattle market was down $8 on the weighted average, and we come in on a Monday with kind of a steady board, and your feeders continue to sell strong. But dressed steers and heifers ranged from 160 to 172 last week, $10 to $15 lower. Weighted average dressed steers 166.40. That was down $12.64. Now we had some trade on Monday. We'll talk about that in a minute. I want to talk about some more of your trade on your weighted average for last week. Nationwide negotiated cash 96,000 head. Compared that to the previous week was 146,100. Same week a year ago, 67,900. About 11.5% of those 96,000 head nationwide sold for the 2 to 4 week delivery. So that's just about normal, what we'd normally see. But we didn't see a whole lot of that 2 to 4 week purchase during the worst of the COVID, but now we're starting to see that come back, and it wouldn't surprise me if they don't start trying to buy more cattle 2 to 4 weeks out, knowing that we're going into these heavy supplies, because it'll make the market very vulnerable to go down hard. Your negotiated grids, 12,500 head. That's about normal too. So we're not seeing the packers want to come in doing voluntary negotiated grid that much. They're going to continue to do what they've always done, and as we get back to normal, they're going to go back to what they've done before. But Monday, we did have some more sales. Iowa sold cattle Monday, confirmed sales 1,100 head, 167 dressed. That would be right in there about what your weighted average was last week. Nebraska, 5,600 head on a Monday in Nebraska. Live sales at 105. Dress sales 159 to 167. Kansas, about 600 head, but still on a Monday, that's something. 98 to $1 live, 167 dressed. Texas, about 500 head, all at $1 live basis. But man, we continue to see these wide price ranges in our fed cattle direct in your 5-area feeding region. We wonder why that is so wide. Well, we're seeing some packers continuing to come in with these kind of donation bids here. And they're still trying to hold things up and still trying to kind of put a good face forward on the deal. But whenever you see those big prices, usually they let their buyers buy just a few loads of cattle each, kind of spread it around a little bit. Likely they're picking some of their favorite guys to do that for, and we're continuing to see more of the bulk of the trade on the lower end of your price range. And as we see, like last week, our weighted averages are a foot lower, and they'll be lower this week too. But our most transparent pricing mechanism we saw was from consolidated beef producers for the last few years here. They're the ones that cooperatively sell a lot of the cattle negotiated cash. Those that are in loose hands, they try to put those cattle together and gain some leverage. Some of your other state affiliates from NCBA, from your Midwestern states, they have marketing programs similar to that, like Iowa does. They pool their cattle sometimes, or about every week. Sometimes it's more than others. Try to get a little bit of leverage on there. That's what guys understand that know how to sell negotiated, is you got to have numbers to get leverage. But we have been seeing at cattle trades tweet out all their sales from consolidated beef producers. They have backed off that during this upheaval, and because it's not a real market. It's not the real market. When you've got a packer that'll come into a huge feed yard and only buy a few loads of cattle at the top of the market, then you got others that want to come in and buy them cheaper because they know that there's a lot of market-ready cattle available out there. It's really hard to get a handle on it. So tweeting out, the sales on what they're doing may confuse people more than anything, and it is kind of confusing because you're not really sure what the true market is. Let's look at your box beef cutout values. They were lower on Monday. They've been lower ever since they topped out there at like 477, something like that. Terrible gouging. So they backed off half now as we're coming off of that. I'm not sure how much that was due to the investigations by the DOJ. Maybe just the publicity of what they were doing out there. We've seen Charles Grassley, the longtime tenured senior senator from Iowa there, demand to get some answers here on these investigations. It's working close to a year, guys, since we had the fire in Holcomb, Kansas. They asked for investigation after that. We still have not heard anything. But box beef cutout values on Monday, choice was down 203 at 228.61. Selects down 492 at 214.35. Had a pretty good movement again, 166 loads of cuts, grinds, and trimmings. Your slaughter, just pretty much all the way back to normal now, guys. And if we don't have another one of these big waves of outbreaks, I think we could be on smooth sailing here right now. And they're taking a lot of precautions. They're taking people's temperatures. If they're not feeling well, if they feel like they're sick or got something, they're letting them stay home. A lot easier. But your slaughter on Monday, 119,000. That's 2,000 more than last week and just 1,000 less than the same week a year ago when everything was normal. So that's pretty darn good, and it looks like we're back running full draft here on your slaughter. And they could kick up the chain speeds a little bit if they need to. We'll see whether they do or not. We've got a lot of cattle to work through the system. Let's talk about your feeder cattle market. Your real-time index on DV auction late on Monday, 128.84, actually up 7 cents with a high volume of feeder cattle and index steers coming through your high volume Southern Plains auctions there, and that's pretty impressive there. You can't help but notice on there your CME cash feeder cattle index plunged on Friday over $1, because that's when they turn in all the cheap directs from your big corporate feeders. Let's talk about your big sales on Monday. Oklahoma National Stockyards, Oklahoma City, 10,300 head on offer there. Your feeders sold steady to $3 higher, and that's heavily dominated by your largest feedlots and your big corporate feeders there. And they continue moving in there steady to $3 higher, steers and heifers. Your calves for the most part, and your feeder calves, those kind of middleweight cattle, steady to $5 lower. Joplin Regional Stockyards, 6,100 head there, steady to $5 lower on steers and heifers, except for some yearling feeder heifers there, $1 to $3 higher. Let's talk about your big special at Sioux Falls Regional Livestock in Worthing, South Dakota. Recently added on to one of DV Auction's broadcast sales. You can view and bid those sales every week right on dvauction.com. I pulled that market a little bit early. They were still selling cattle, didn't have their government market report out yet, but 4,700 head, as you can see here on the automated market report from DV Auction through Cattle Market Central. It appeared on there that your feeder calves there, of course, those high quality northern feeding type calves there, and those guys up there, those farmer feeders, they want to add value to their corn by feeding it to cattle. So a lot of those guys prefer those big calves, those lighter feeder cattle, and instead of the backgrounded yearlings that they also have in there too, they were some lower, and your middleweight feeder calves were some higher there. Let's talk about some of your best tested weights there. 492 head of 7-weight steers, average 758, 141.86. That was about $5 higher. 465 head of your 8-weight steers, averaged 839 at 130.21. That was quite a bit lower than last week for the weighted average on your 8-weight steers. 441 head of the 9-weight steers in Worthing, South Dakota, averaged 951 at 116.01, and that was a couple bucks higher on your weighted average price. Your best drag of heifers was your 7-weight heifers, 760 head of those so far, weighed 756 pounds on the average, and bring 124.18 weighted average price. That was about $3 better than last week, and had a good run and a snappy sale there at Sioux Falls Regional Livestock. But your best quote that I saw anywhere on Monday was from your nation's feeder cattle market early in the week, Oklahoma National Stockyards, from the Stockman, Oklahoma firm that had a load of thin-fleshed 907-pound feeder steers there, bring 131.75. And that's your feeder flash for Tuesday.